Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, part 3 of our wood burning series. When we left last week's show, we had most of the building completed, but now it's time to move on to the shading of the roof. The next thing I want to do is add a bit of color or shading to our roof panels. And for that, I'm going to use a shader tip. And I think looking at my chart here, I'm probably going to go for a lower heat setting, like a heat of 4, because I'm picturing the sun is going to be hitting on this. This is going to be brightly colored. This back area here will be a little darker. So we'll turn the heat up for that. But for these roof panels, we just want to add a nice golden shade to them with a little bit of darkness underneath that top ridge where the sun wouldn't get to. So I guess we'll start shading in that. I've turned the setting up of the burning iron just to add some darker details. I kind of picture it as rust stains on a metal roof. I'm sure you've all seen it where you'll see a barn in the country and the roof will be all stained up. Well, that's kind of what I picture for this roof. So I'm just adding sporadic dark spots there. I'm pretty sure they're all going to blend right in and just make it that much more interesting of a piece. So don't be afraid to add your own little elements in there. I mean, if you wanted to change this roof to a wooden roof, you could, or even a shingled roof. You could use some stippling in there for shading or what have you. So just carry on and get your metal roof here, or whatever roof you choose. Get it all shaded in the way that you like. Our next step is using a writing nib or a writing tip. We're just going to outline our rocks here. And as well, we're going to outline all of our walking stones that are on the pathway. Well, it's now time to shade our water, and all we're going to do is set our shading nib or our shading pen at a moderate setting. We don't want it too long, and we're just going to drag some lines here through the water just in the direction of the flow. Our next step will be to shade in our water wheel, and we're just going to lower the temperature down to 3, and we're going to get a nice even shade all the way across here, and then we'll darken it in the corners where the shadows are after we get our base shade here. With our base coat done, I've turned it up 1 notch to 4, and we're just going to start darkening a little bit of this and move it up as we go. The further it goes down underneath the water wheel, of course, the darker the shadow there will be. So you want to lighten it more as it comes up towards the light. And we're going to turn it up 1 more notch to 5 and just repeat the process till we're happy with what we have on our project. And much like we did with the stones on the opposite side of the water wheel, we're going to give them a base shade. Now this will be quite a bit darker than what the other ones were, only because they're kind of hidden in here between the water wheel and the barn or house or whatever this building is, and the stones will be much darker. So once we get this base coating on, we're going to start shading them, and all we're going to do really is just from the bottom, we're going to shade the bottom half of them just to give them a little bit of contour. That's all we want to do. You don't want to get them any darker or color them anymore. Just a little bit of a dark line at the base of each of these stones. And we'll kind of drag it up a little bit to kind of help fade it so it's not so sharp. Just want to remember that it is a small area. You don't want to go crazy here because it'll get way too muddy way too quickly. And then once we get that done, we're going to take a writing tip and we're going to turn it up to probably about 6, I would say. And we're just going to go in and tighten up and retrace all of our block lines to sort of give them a lot more definition than what we've done so far. And we'll do the same thing on this back side of it as well. And the stones in here as well. Now the stones that are here underneath the cabin, what we're going to do is we're basically going to make them much darker. We will leave as many highlights as we can to define them, but for the most part they will be pretty dark as they're underneath the foundation of the house. And then just to blend it all in, we're going to turn this up quite a bit, up to, it looks like just before 6. And we're just going to touch just below the foundation of the house and then drag that black line down a little bit just to try to blend things in a little more. Now I can see here where I went over the line just a little bit with the shading on this wheel, and this is where we're going to take our X-Acto blade, and we're just going to be very carefully scraping this away up to the line just to clean it up a little bit. Just like that. I'd also like to, while I've got the knife out, I'd like to add a few highlights to the windows. And all I'm going to do is just scratch a couple lines in them in each one of the window panes. It's a small little detail, but it goes a long way to adding to the entire look of your project. Our next step is to mark out the bark on the tree that's beside our cabin. And for that, we're going to use our skew tip, set it at about, I would say, a heat setting of 5 or 6. And just like we did in the side panels of the building, we're going to burn in some bark or wood grain into our tree trunks. With the main trunk done, we're now going to use our pencil and draw in just sporadic areas where the trunk or the outer branches or upper branches of the trees might be exposed between the foliage. And then using our skew tip, just like we did with the base of the tree, at a setting of about 5 or 6, we're going to wood burn all of our tree trunks that we just drew in, outlining them first and then filling them in with some wood grain patterns, just like we did with both the trunk and the boards of the building. Well, it's now time to do the foliage of the trees, and I'm showing this in real time just to demonstrate how painstakingly slow it is. The process here is that you want to use a spoon shader, and while using the spoon shader on a setting of about 5 or 6, you want to use your tip in spirals, tight little spirals with very light pressure on the board, just letting each one overlap on itself to create a large mixture of light and dark areas. The way it works is that from a distance, it will mimic the leaves of a tree perfectly. Now, at some point in time, once you start making progress on the rest of the tree, you will actually end up shading the underside of larger leaf groups, and then as well, using the same spoon shader on a moderate setting, you will just draw lines right over top of the foliage in order to mimic the shading or the shadows of the branches that would lie underneath the leaves of the tree. Now that we are done with the trees in the foreground, we will add trees to the background. The process is exactly the same, except for the nib that you use, and the pen will actually be a writing tip. So those tight spirals will be made with the writing tip set to about a heat of 5, and you will create the trees for the background. One of the final steps that's left in order to complete this wood burning is to wood burn in the grass. Quite possibly one of the most time consuming things to do on this entire project,
as each blade of grass is drawn in individually. Now, as you get closer to the foreground, you will use longer strokes, and as you get further into the background, you will use shorter strokes for the grass. You also want to try to curve each blade alternately, sort of left and right, and try to mix it up between longer blades, shorter blades, left, right, straight up and down. There has to be a large mixture of different kinds of blades in order to make it believable for your wood burning. Once you get all of that done, you can use a shader to add different textures and different depths of burning throughout the entire lawn area, and then carry on with the whole process until the entire lawn and grassy area is completed.
And there you have it. Pyrography, or wood burning. Guys, this craft is a lot of fun, and it doesn't really take a lot of skill. What it takes is a lot of patience and a lot of practice. Some of the methods that I've shown you here are extremely time consuming, and all in all, this entire project probably took me just a little over 30 hours and 3 days to complete. So, will you get perfect results right from the get-go, right out of the gate? No, you won't. But what you will get is a foundation that you can build on to get better and better at the craft. One thing I would really suggest, or strongly suggest, when you're first learning how to wood burn is get yourself a chunk of wood and just burn it. Don't worry about what you're drawing. Don't worry about if it looks good. Don't even worry about if you have a subject. Concentrate more on getting good, even burns. Try different heat settings. Try different patterns, different methods. Try those tight spirals. Try bigger spirals. Try just dots. Try little hash marks back and forth. Do whatever you can in order to learn how your wood burner works and how it reacts according to how you move your hand and how you hold it, how much pressure, what the heat setting is. There's 1,000,001 variables. So learn your tool before you learn your craft. Doodle, have some fun, and eventually you're going to get to this point. Guys, I want to thank you for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed the series. I've had a lot of fun with it. It's been a while since I've done a wood burning, and I have to say I honestly enjoyed this one. It was a lot of fun. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another Alternative Tuesdays.